20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meese.
Well, we had a report of a vehicle fire in Magna, westbound on the 21st South Freeway, just after 7200 West. Still no confirmation of that, but if you're traveling that direction, keep an eye out for fire crews arriving at the scene. It's Zero Res's best deal of the year. Get one room of carpet cleaned, starting at $25 per room with promo code 25RM. Book online anytime at ZeroRes.com. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, we'll see sunny skies and warm temperatures through the first part of the week. And a weak inversion will also impact our air quality. Showers move into Utah on Friday. And right now we're at 48 degrees with sunny skies. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
The rumblings out of the Senate in Washington, D.C. is that a border security bill is very close to being all tightened up and done and ready to go to the floor. That's the headline. The question will be, what's actually in it? When legislators actually get a chance to read what's in the bill, what happens after that? But the question for us beyond the headlines of the process today is the role of the current and the former president in the process. And is it that everything is becoming all politics when it comes to the border and immigration? And if we're all politics all the time, will that keep us a safe distance from ever getting to good policy that solves problems? Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
All right, so we want to dive into where we actually are in all of this and the influences that are being exerted as it relates to dealing not only with the funding for border security, but also this has been connected and tied to aid to Ukraine, as well as to Israel, Taiwan, and other places around the world. And so all of this has gotten conflated into one big muddled mess, as only Congress can do. And so we want to just peel it back a little bit to look at what's going on and get to the politics of it, because I really believe that regardless of what is actually in this particular bill or how they got it there, a lot of the problems are not the policy problems. The problems have to do with the politics on both sides of the political aisle. So let's start with those who have been working in a bipartisan way to come up with a bill. Again, you can criticize that part of the process. We don't know what's in it yet, so it's hard to criticize specifically. In fact, yesterday on Face the Nation, Senator James Langford, a Republican from Oklahoma, he talked about a lot of the recent GOP criticism, so criticism coming out of his own party, including a censure from his own state Republican Party, that he was even in the room negotiating about border security and immigration, said that all of this is just based on a lot of internet rumor and not a whole lot of truth underneath it.
Everyone's looking to be able to read the bill at this point. That's the key aspect. So everyone can get a chance to read it. Right now, they're all functioning off of internet rumors of what's in the bill, and many of them are false. So people want to be able to just see it, read it, go through it, and to be able to see the dramatic change that this really makes and how we handle our immigration system and how we work to be able to secure our border completely. That's been the simple request of Americans, whether you're Republican, Democrat, or Independent. People just want a secure border where we have legal immigration, but we're not promoting illegal immigration.
All right, so that was Senator James Langford, again, saying, hey, a lot of this is rumor and innuendo. A lot of this is political folks who are trying to raise campaign money, which we are always critical of on this program. Doesn't matter which side of the aisle it is sadly where we've gotten to. Now, really interesting, Senator Langford, again, Republican from Oklahoma, he talked about the presidential authority that was given in this bill. And interestingly, this has suddenly become a Democratic point as well. He explained that that authority would give the president of whatever political persuasion the ability to shut down the border when it becomes overwhelmed.
This is a new authority to say when we can no longer detain and deport, when we can't process the people and actually make a decision right there at the border, then we'll actually turn those folks back around to Mexico and say we can no longer do this. That gives the authority to the United States and to law enforcement rather than the authority to the criminal cartels. Right now, the cartels can just rush our border. They'll get through as many people as they want to be able to get through. We cannot have criminal organizations running our southern border.
So that overwhelmed component is an interesting one to give the president, to give the White House the authority to shut down the border when it is overwhelmed. Now, that sounds interesting. Sounds like it might even be not a bad strategy. The problem is the minimum is 5,000. 5,000 a day is kind of where they're saying this is where it begins to be overwhelmed. I think if you ask any of those cities along the U.S. border, they'll say the number is much smaller than that in terms of being overwhelmed. So that'll be an interesting component. It's also always interesting when Congress abdicates authority to the executive branch. Sometimes they do that because they think it gets them off the hook, or they can then shrug their shoulders and say, well, not my problem. I wanted border security. But they're abdicating authority to the president to say whether or not the border is overwhelmed. I think that should be debated very specifically and in great length and detail on the floor of the Senate. Now, Senator Chris Murphy, the lead Democrat negotiator on this bill, he said the bill could be ready by next week, which is actually today. He also took a swipe at the former president for campaigning against the bill.
We are finalizing the last pieces of text right now. This bill could be ready to be on the floor of the United States Senate next week, but it won't be if Republicans decide that they want to keep this issue unsettled for political purposes. So I was glad to hear the president come out and speak forcefully in favor of this bill. I am hopeful that we will still have enough Republicans in the Senate who want to fix the problem at the border rather than just do Donald Trump's bidding.
So that's another interesting component to all of this in terms of how the presidential candidates are viewing this. Senator Murphy also emphasized the importance of passing the bill, that it's also key to connect this to that continued funding for Ukraine.
If we don't pass this bill, Ukraine won't get its military funding. Remember, the whole reason that we are talking about border is because Republicans have said they will let Vladimir Putin march his army in and through Ukraine if we don't pass a bill that includes border provisions and Ukraine funding. So the consequence of failure here is not just that we keep immigration as an open issue available for Donald Trump to exploit in the next election. It is also that Ukraine loses this war.
All right, and so let's unpack a few of those things, which I think are problematic. One, I think saying, hey, it's border security or Vladimir Putin takes over the planet, we're conflating and interconnecting the wrong issues. I realize they have been for some time in terms of, hey, let's do these two things together. They do not have to be connected. And if they had someone with courage to put it on the floor, put the Ukraine funding, the Israel funding, Taiwan, and other places, put it all together, put that on the floor. But everybody's trying to get this high leverage moment, and it's all political, which, again, prevents us from getting a good policy in most cases. I worry about the abdication of authority from the legislative branch. Clearly, in the Constitution, the House and the Senate are responsible for those pieces in terms of immigration. And to abdicate that authority and say the president gets to decide when the border's overwhelmed, the president gets to decide when law enforcement can just turn back asylum seekers, that doesn't sound quite right to me. It doesn't quite pass the smell test, in my view, for, again, regardless of what side of the political aisle you're on or who's in charge of the White House at any given moment. To me, that doesn't quite fly. And so to me, as we watch this thing play out, and again, we could have bill text as early as this afternoon. My sources in D.C. are saying it looks like it's there. It looks like they could get it on the floor. Now, process-wise, they're going to put it on the floor and debate it, which will just be a series of speeches. They're not going to do what you normally do with a bill of this magnitude, which is run it through a committee and do what is called a markup. And if you've ever marked up a paper for a class or for a business presentation, a markup is just that. You go through line by line, sentence by sentence, and make sure it all makes sense, that all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed, that one declaration doesn't offset another or isn't directly opposite or in conflict with another. And then how are you going to pay for it? And so you go through all that. It's called a markup. You make tweaks, you make adjustments, you get the bill text nice and clean, and then you can have your debate. But they're not going to do that on this. They're going to circumvent that and take it straight to the floor. And we also already know that the House has said it's dead on arrival when it gets to the House. So again, we're back to this same process. So here's the thing again, question of it all. Regardless, again, of what you're thinking politically, let's talk about it in the context of what is the best policy in terms of how do we do this. I thought one of the most interesting statements that nobody really talked about over the weekend was actually Senator Tom Tillis, a Republican from North Carolina. He's been critical of Republicans, saying, hey, we really should get this done because it is the right thing to be done. And so let's have that debate. Let's get the best possible bill and let's move on. But here's the quote, and to me, this is the important thing. Senator Tillis said to Republicans, if we fail to get this passed, I am going to file exactly the same bill if President Trump wins and we have a majority in the Senate in 2025. And I'll guarantee you that everybody who's against it will be for it. And that's why it's the politics that are the problem. If you're only voting against the bill because it's to the political advantage of your opponent, you're not leading, you're politicking. And that's part of the problem.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. The political accusations will only get louder.
Stop the invasion of our southern border.
He doesn't want us to solve the border problem because he wants to blame Biden for it.
The world around us will only become more divided. With more conflict come key decisions about news stories and the facts. That's why we choose our words carefully at KSL, ask better questions, and leave the conclusions to you. The stakes are higher, and we have you covered at KSL News Radio.
Sometimes when our furnace stops working, it's something simple we can fix ourselves, if we only knew how. What's up, everybody? I'm Mike Wilson with Any Hour Services, and the next time your furnace stops working, before you call a company out to fix it, try this first. Go shut the furnace down and make sure your air filter is clean. Go around the house and make sure the vents are open and there's nothing blocking the return air. If it's been a while since you've changed the batteries in your thermostat, go ahead and do that too. Then go turn the furnace back on, and if it stays on, you're probably good. If it stops working again, you're probably going to want a technician to check it out. If you don't know one, Any Hour Services has a special offer for any homeowners listening. One of our HVAC technicians will diagnose and troubleshoot your furnace for only $29. Then they'll explain what they found and present you with repair options. And don't worry, our technicians service all brands. Call Any Hour Services and let them know you heard about this $29 troubleshooting special on the radio. 801-443-7400. You can Google Any Hour Services. You can even schedule online at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
Are you one of those people?
Those people.
You know, self-driven,
Confident.
love sales and understanding marketing.
Would you like to work with a variety of businesses?
Large and small, helping them succeed.
Do you want to actually make the kind of money you know you should make?
Are you looking for a career with an opportunity to grow?
Well, we're looking for those people.
Bonneville Salt Lake Media Group is looking for account executives from a variety of backgrounds and experience levels to connect with high-potential business opportunities for digital marketing.
KSL Podcasts,
KSL News Radio,
103.5 The Era,
FM 100.3,
and 97.5 The KSL Sports Zone.
It's advertising sales
That will change your world.
not to mention the world-class list of benefits we're famous for. You'll work in person and remotely.
In a dynamic team culture with opportunities to reach audiences both locally and globally.
If this is the kind of work that interests you, text careers to 57500. That's careers to 57500.
Text careers to 57500.
Valentine's Day is here. This year, give the ultimate gift. Name a star after your sweetheart. This is Rocky Moselle with International Star Registry. For 45 years, we've named millions of stars for celebrities, dignitaries, and individuals worldwide. For $59 and a call to 800-282-3333 or visit starregistry.com, you can give the most memorable gift. The star you name will be recorded in book form in the U.S. Copyright Office. Visit starregistry.com or call 800-282-3333.
The Angie's List you know and trust is now Angie, and we're so much more than just a list. We still connect you with top local pros and show you ratings and reviews, but now we also let you compare upfront prices on hundreds of projects and book a service instantly. We can even handle the rest of your project from start to finish. So remember, Angie's List is now Angie, and we're here to get your job done right. Get started at Angie.com. That's ANGI, or download the app today.
The biggest hunting show in the West is back, along with Utah's top 200 hunting permits for just $5 each. It's the Western Hunting and Conservation Expo in Salt Lake City, February 15th to 18th. Talk with hundreds of guides, outfitters, and exhibitors. Book a hunt, see the latest gear, and best of all, you could hunt Utah's biggest bucks and bulls for just $5. It's all at the Western Hunting and Conservation Expo, produced in cooperation with the Utah Office of Tourism. Get tickets and details at huntexpo.com.
Okay, that's good. Whoa, Dave!
Sorry, I'll go grab some paper towels.
You can't let Dave pour things. He works at JCW's. They fill stuff up past the brim over there, like their milkshakes. They're thick, rich, and oh my gosh.
Delicious?
Oh no, Dave's filling up Crystal's car for her.
Dave, stop!
Hey, this is Clark for JCW. Stop into any of our 5 locations today. We're located in American Fork, Thanksgiving Point, Provo, South Jordan, and our new location in Harriman. Come in and see why at JCW's we believe in quality and a lot of it.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, Utah lawmakers looking to make a major expansion to UTA transit through the west side of Salt Lake County. Second, a new temple constructed by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints will open for tours on February 1st. And third, the enemy drone that killed 3 American service members in Jordan may have been mistaken for one of our own. Right now, 48 degrees and sunny in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
We are really thrilled to have joining us on the program today Saeed Ghassaminejad, Senior Iran Advisor at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. And Saeed, welcome to the show. We really appreciate you making time on a very busy day today. And for our listeners who haven't been following closely, clearly there were big issues in Jordan over the weekend, including the loss of life of 3 U.S. military personnel. For our listeners, just give us a little context in terms of what actually happened. What do we know at this point?
Thanks for having me. You know that the Iran-backed militia attacked a U.S. base in Jordan near the border of Syria, and they killed 3 U.S. service members, injured 25. The attack was done through drones, and this was, I think, the most significant attack in terms of victims, injuries, and deaths. After October 7th, because after October 7th, we have seen really an uptick in the number of attacks against U.S. troops in the region, in Syria and Iraq.
Yeah, and so as you look at that, let's start with the drones themselves in terms of getting in there. Again, it clear seems to be a Iranian-backed militia. First, the ability that they had to get those drones into a position where they could do harm to American forces. What does that tell us about the region and what we're really up against? So
Iran is actually controlling a big chunk of Syria and Iraq. So if you look at the map, so through Iraq and Syria, Iran actually has a corridor going from Iran through Iraq to Syria. So sending the drones to the militia is not really a tough job to do.
Right.
And there is really no border between Iraq and Syria right now.
Yeah, and so in terms of the path forward, in terms of the response, President Biden, of course, has come out and said there will be a very emphatic response from the United States. What do you see happening? And then let's get into the kind of the broader issue there. What does that do in terms of how this is all playing out in the Middle East? Is this a first step to a more broader war? Are there things that can be done to contain? How do you see that all playing out?
So the Biden administration has not been responding proportionally to the attacks against U.S. troops by the Iran-backed militia. There has been more than 100 attacks, and the number of times the Biden administration has responded is less than 10, I think. If the Biden administration goes and attack some militia members somewhere in Syria or Iraq, I don't think that's going to create the deterrence, and I think that's playing into hands of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard, because the Islamic Revolutionary Guard, which is ordering these attacks, which is organizing these militia groups, they don't care if the Biden administration targets, some of these groups in Syria or Iraq, even if some IRGC members are killed. So the last time that the U.S. was able to create deterrence for a time was when the Trump administration eliminated Qasem Soleimani after a similar attack by the Iran-backed militia against U.S. troops. So either the Biden administration should eliminate a very high value target, or should target IRGC Quds Force, which is the branch of the IRGC in charge of these attacks outside Iran, inside the borders of Iran, or should target IRGC Navy, which is really, which has been harassing the U.S. Navy and the commerce in the Persian Gulf. Anything short of these three options, I don't think it's going to create a deterrence. The problem is that the Biden administration really has a bad Iran policy. I think it's like the foreign policy version of positive reinforcement. So they think if they give money to the mullahs in Tehran, they stop being bad kids. And it has really not worked. Since the Biden administration came to power, Iran has sold more than $100 billion of oil. Iran's non-oil export has reached is at high record now, and Iran's access to this revenue has really increased. And what happened is that we see that they are spending a lot of it on these proxies. We know that Tehran increased the spending on Hamas from $100 million to $350 million last year. We know that they have initiated a very large campaign of recruiting in Yemen. We know that they have been sending a lot of weapons to Hezbollah, to the Houthis, to Hamas. So giving them money really doesn't work. So there needs to be a significant response to create some kind of deterrence against the regime. If not, they will continue attacking U.S. troops. Their goal is to kick out the United States out of the region, to control the flow of energy from the Persian Gulf, to control the flow of commerce through the Red Sea, and then try to weaken Israel as much as possible, finally eliminate it, and do a regime change in Saudi Arabia. That's the goal of the regime in Tehran.
So important, so many complexities there, and I think you're absolutely right, Saeed, in terms of that rewarding bad behavior versus just trying to pay off good behavior, and just how that has continued to escalate, and how those profits end up going to proxies that are causing more problems for the United States in the region as well. Fantastic insight and perspective. Saeed Ghassem-Minajad, Senior Iran Advisor from the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Saeed, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So there's a lot to unpack there, and we're going to do this over several segments during the course of the day today, because it is so important to understand what this is really all about, what it actually means, and what comes next. I think Saeed was very specific in terms of what it is that Iran is going for in all of this, that they are trying to control the flow of energy in the region, that they are trying to control and manipulate commerce in the area, hoping to force the U.S. influence out. And they've been able to do that because the administration has allowed, there's been over $100 billion in oil revenue going through Iran. And again, those profits are going to proxies, such as those that carried out the attack over the weekend that killed 3 U.S. service members injured. We were just updated within the last hour that the injured number is up over 40 now, 40 U.S. military. And I will just mention the Pentagon also released the names of those that were killed by these drones, these Iranian proxies William Rivers was 46, Kennedy Sanders, 24 years of age, and Breonna Moffett, 23 years of age, some of America's finest. And that's part of the price of all of this as well. And so we are going to stay with this conversation, as I mentioned, throughout the day. Coming up at 1:50, we're going to talk about the White House response to the attack in Jordan, what they have said, what they have not said, and how they're posturing and positioning in terms of what comes next. Then we're going to come back to it during the 2 o'clock hour at 2:35. Paul McCleary from Politico will join us to give us a little deeper dive into some of the nuances within the region and how that will play out as well. All right, we'll go ahead and we'll step aside for some bottom-of-the-hour news. When we come back, we'll continue here on Inside Sources. We're going to look at voting patterns and how easy it is to get into the pattern and what happens if we get out of the pattern of actually voting. Impacts are huge. We'll talk about it coming up next.
It's 1:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top story this hour, a bus driver from the Alpine School District allegedly sat on a child with disabilities in order to restrain him. Now his parents are suing. KSL News Radio's Hugo Rickard-Bell has been reading through the court documents.
Reading through the court documents, prosecutors are alleging this is not the first time Kathy Draper, a bus driver employed by Alpine School District, had abused the 9-year-old. They say Alpine School District officials had seen video evidence of Draper physically abusing the same child before and apparently did nothing. The lawsuit also says the child has intellectual and physical disabilities.
KSL has reached out to the Alpine School District for comment. They have yet to respond. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. The 3 U.S. service members killed in a drone attack in Georgia were members of an Army Reserve unit from Georgia. About 40 others were injured when the drone hit a trailer where the soldiers were sleeping. The enemy drone may have slipped by American air defenses because they were expecting one of the American drones to return at about the same time. We're learning new details about last month's mass shooting at the University of Nevada in Las Vegas.
When 67-year-old shooter Anthony Polito entered the business school at UNLV on December 6th, he had 2 laminated cards on him, which included the photos, names, and room numbers of his targets, all members of the faculty. Polito had tried to get a job there, but had been denied, and police believe he was disgruntled. ABC News learning in a new investigative report, blood-stained laminated cards were found at the scene. Investigators finding his intended targets were not there that day, so he instead shot random victims. Alex Stone, ABC News.
Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average up on the day right now, 196 points, and the NASDAQ up 171. KSL weather, sunshine, but we've got some haze in the valleys as well. That's next. KSL News Time, 1:32.
Here's a way to get breaking news updates anywhere you go.
At the store or in a work meeting, you can get breaking news on your phone.
You can quickly read it, swipe, or click for more. It's super discreet, super fast.
That's the app for KSL News Radio.
It's the dead of winter, and our friends at Advanced Window Products have a wonderful wintertime offer. This is Jeff Kaplan. If the cold is seeping into your house right now, Nate and Jake will give you $2,500 off on double-pane windows and the highest quality custom frames built right here in Utah. Any style, any color, and the $2,500 is atop their already low prices. See, they build the windows, they install the windows, and they guarantee them for life. So there's no middleman markup. At Advanced Window Products, they offer 0% financing. You can save now, pay later, so take advantage in the dead of winter while the wind is whistling and give your home, your number one asset, a fresh new look. Plus, you save money on heating and air conditioning, so much so the energy companies offer rebates. Buy local. Their factory's right here in Salt Lake City. Save an extra $2,500 off the best windows and frames in Utah. 801-850-9100. 801-850-9100. Or visit AdvancedWindowsUSA.com.
Hey, I'm Andy. If you don't know me, it's probably because I'm not famous. But I did start a men's grooming company called Harry's. The idea for Harry's came out of a frustrating experience I had buying razor blades. Most brands were overpriced, overdesigned, and out of touch. At Harry's, our approach is simple. Here's our secret. We make sharp, durable blades and sell them at honest prices for as low as $2 each. We care about quality so much that we do some crazy things, like by our world-class German blade factory. Millions of guys have already made the switch to Harry's. So thank you if you're one of them. And if you're not, we hope you give us a try soon. Harry's is available online and in-store at a retailer near you. Get a $13 trial set for just $3 at harrys.com/news. That's harrys.com/news. Or check us out at your local Costco for a price you can't find anywhere else. Just look for the Chrome Razor with 13 blade refills at your local Costco. You can't miss it. Exclusive to Costco members.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Sinclair's Dino Pay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meese.
Pretty quiet on your Valley freeways. Normal KSL travel times up and down the I-15 corridor, and looking at a quiet commute on I-215 to the east, west, and south belts. No problems on the 201 or I-80. Lagoon is looking for ride maintenance technicians. Lagoon offers excellent mechanical training programs with amazing career opportunities. Ride maintenance technician position is full-time and year-round. Details, visit lagoonpark.com/jobs. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, sunny skies, warm temperatures through the first part of this week. A weak inversion will impact our air quality. Then showers move into Utah a little bit later. And right now, we're at 50 degrees with sunny skies. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com for Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, this year's election cycle is incredibly difficult to keep up with. There's all kinds of changes and challenges. There's far more chaos than there is clarity, even in terms of simple things of like, when do I vote? How do I vote? When do I show up to vote? Because it's become so different. Of course, you've had legal battles in terms of former President Trump being on and off balance in certain states. You had the Democratic primary up in New Hampshire where the sitting president was not on the ballot for the primary there in New Hampshire. A lot of things going back and forth in all of this, and many voters are simply exhausted and exasperated. And there's more to it than that, because an exhausted and exasperated voter usually doesn't vote. To help us break all of this down and bring great clarity to all of it, we're really thrilled to have joining us on the program Maggie Astor, who covers politics for the New York Times. She not only focuses on the breaking news, the policies, the campaigns, but has done some really important work in how underrepresented and marginalized groups are impacted by the political systems themselves, the process. And Maggie, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
I love the beginning of your piece. Democracy is messy, but it's usually not this messy. Give us a little sense in terms of what you're seeing across the country.
Well, basically, if you look at the early states, the states that are voting, that have either already voted or are voting in the next few weeks, pretty much all of them have some sort of complication that is making their election different than in past years. So in New Hampshire, in the Democratic primary, you had President Biden not being on the ballot and his supporters running this write-in campaign because New Hampshire held its primary earlier than the DNC wanted it to. In South Carolina, you have the Republican and the Democratic primaries being held on different dates next month. And then in Nevada, you actually have, for Republicans, a primary, which is being run by the state, and a caucus, which is being run by the state Republican Party. And the caucus will award the delegates for the Republican nomination, but the primary is what people are getting ballots in the mail for. So there's actually these two competing elections, and many voters just don't understand what the structure even is to have their vote count.
It is getting so complicated. And I would always say when you're looking at a voter, the more they hesitate, the more they have to vacillate, the less likely they are to participate and actually vote. And I think Nevada is probably the ultimate test case there, where you have former President Trump, who will be the only one really being considered in the caucuses, which will allocate the delegates. And then you have the primary ballot, which, as you mentioned, are being mailed to everyone's home, and the only one really left on that one is Nikki Haley, Tim Scott, and I think Mike Pence, a bunch with a whole bunch of other names that didn't really recognize. All of that leads to an interesting thing, and I love that you dug into this in your piece because I think it's the more important issue than all of this, and that is the simple practice of getting that habit of voting and what happens when we disrupt that. Dig into that for us.
Yeah, so there's actually a pretty large body of academic research showing that voting is habit forming, meaning that when someone votes one time, they are more likely to vote again in the future. And conversely, if someone misses an election, they are less likely to vote again in the future. So voting in every election becomes a habit that you keep up over time. And a number of political scientists have found that when elections are confusing, when voters don't know what to do, if they miss that election, that effect can actually last for years in terms of making them less likely to vote in the future because they lost that habit. So the stakes are really a lot, they're a lot larger than just the presidential nomination. Obviously, as important as the presidential nominations are, the stakes really go beyond that in terms of people's voting habits and how likely they are to continue participating in future elections.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you raised that because we so often get focused on the presidential and the big federal races. But the fact of having a voter get out of the habit and out of cycles, so to speak, that impacts everything from the state level down to the county, the city, the local community, that if people become disengaged, that totally changes the dynamics there. And again, a less engaged citizenry is not a good day for the republic.
Yeah, absolutely. And researchers have also found that voting habits endure most strongly when it comes to elections of the same format. So, for example, someone might have a habit of voting in general elections in November, but even if they have that habit pretty well established, it won't necessarily carry over to a primary election that's conducted on an unusual date or in a different format. So even those voters who are really in the habit of voting can potentially get out of the habit with these differently formatted elections.
Yeah, and we've seen some of that right here in the state of Utah where we've had special elections and off-year elections, and we've mushed some of them together and some of them a week apart. And I do think it creates, again, more confusion than clarity, and that does disrupt that. Any indication in terms of your research, Maggie, in terms of the young voters who, because of all of the confusion, that just never get into the habit early on in their ability to vote cycles?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a pretty substantial amount of research showing that the first election that a voter is eligible to vote in, the first election after they turn 18, is really important in terms of establishing those habits. One of the studies that I cited in my story, I think this particular component of the study wasn't in my story, but it found that voters who turned 18 just before an election, so they were just old enough to vote, they actually had better voting habits for years down the line than people who were just too young to vote, who were, 17 years old and 11 months. So those people who got the opportunity to establish the habits right after their 18th birthday actually continued to vote in larger numbers for years down the line.
Oh, that's fascinating. That is so fascinating that if you were just right there, so you had that opportunity to immediately vote, be part of the process, versus if you were just a little too young. That's really interesting. Anything else from your research or other things that we should be keeping our eye on as this kind of muddled mess that is 2024 undulates along?
Well, I mean, I'll really be looking at the turnout levels especially in Nevada. I'll be really interested to see how many people participate in these two different elections, the primary and the caucuses. I'll be interested to see what the total turnout is between the two, and also whether one of them gets more participation than the other. I don't know what the results are going to be, but I think that the participation there will be pretty indicative in terms of how much confusion this did cause and to what extent voters were able to, overcome the change in format.
Yeah, great perspective. It's a great piece. Check it out at the New York Times today. Maggie Astor covers politics for the Times, and again, love her work, especially in these underrepresented, marginalized groups affected by the system and the process. And I think this is one of those things that can impact all of us. As Maggie said, voting is habit forming, and it's a good habit to get to. Maggie, thanks so much for joining us today. Great perspective.
Thank you very much.
All right, that's Maggie Astor from the New York Times. And yes, voting is habit forming, and that is the best kind of habit we need. And just remember, the more we have this kind of confusion, this exhaustion and exasperation, the less likely people are to participate. And then if the habit is broken and the cycle continues, our government becomes less representative, becomes less effective, and we all become a little less free. We'll be right back.
The new year is here, and it's time to take advantage of Zero Res's best deal of the year. Carpets, tile, rugs, upholstery, basically every surface in your home can be Zero Resified. So it's time to call the cleaning pros at Zero Res. Don't forget your air ducts to help alleviate allergies or asthma. Enjoy less dust, lower energy bills, and your home will stay cleaner longer. Don't DIY it. Call Zero Res because you know it's safe and effective. Zero Res has a 4.8 rating on Google with over 3,300 reviews. The Zero Res Gotta Love It guarantee makes it easy to get what you pay for. Yeah, Zero Res absolutely stands behind every cleaning. Don't miss the best deal of the year. Get back to clean and get one room of carpet cleaning starting at just $25 per room by using promo code 25RM. Call Zero Res at 866-ZERO-RES or go online at ZeroRes.com and say you want the station special. Zero Res. Spell it backward or forwards. It spells the same.
I guess it's human nature, Amanda, that no matter how much money we have in our savings account, it never seems like it's enough. And if you find yourself in that mode right now, let us direct you over to our friends at UCCU. They are wanting to help you supercharge your savings.
UCCU is offering high-rate savings options with yields up to 5.5%. All you do is go to UCCU.com and select a high-rate savings option to do just what you said, supercharge your savings.
You're going to get a much bigger return on your savings right now. It's a savings certificate, which means you make one deposit up front and your money grows over a fixed period of time. So you can have that grow over 5 years, but UCCU has created some very short-term savings certificates with high yields, short like 6 months, 9 months, or a year.
So you decide how long do you want to put that money. You deposit money, a one-time only deposit, and then you let it stay in. The longer it stays in there, the higher the interest rate you earn.
And if you need immediate access to your money, UCCU's Money Market will give you a high yield and anytime access.
UCCU, you're going to love where you bank.
Getting help with electrical repairs is easier than you think. All you have to do is call Any Hour Services or schedule an appointment at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
KSL Broadcast Group contests are open to participants 13 years of age and older that are residents of Utah, Idaho, Wyoming, and Nevada, unless otherwise specified. Employees or agents of the station, Bonneville International Corporation, or other area radio stations, or any entity associated with the contest may not enter. Persons who have won in the last 90 days from a station contest or event are not eligible. Full general contest rules are available at kslnewsradio.com.
Mom and Dad used to argue about everything, especially about Dad's drinking. It drove me crazy. It got so bad, I couldn't do my homework. I couldn't concentrate. I absolutely refused to let any of my friends come to our house for any reason. I would have been humiliated if anyone found out how much my dad drank and how loud my mom screamed at him. My family went from totally crazy to quiet, calm, and even peaceful. The only thing that happened is my mom started going to Al-Anon family groups. Her relationship with my dad really changed. I asked Mom if she would take me to her Al-Anon meetings or to Alateen. I wanted to see if I could have a better relationship with my dad. I'm sure glad I did. If someone's drinking troubling you, you might be surprised at what you can learn in an Al-Anon or Alateen family group from people just like you. Call 1-888-4-ALANON or go to alanon.org.
Dave and Debbie.
I want our listeners to feel like they have an advocate.
that they have somebody that's going to fight for them, challenge the status quo or the pithy soundbite. We have a unique job where we have access to interviews and people that not everyone has. We take that seriously. So if we do feel like we're getting a spin, then we can challenge it. I love it when people tell me, I was just thinking about that question that you asked. I'm glad you asked that question. That's like the height of compliment.
I want our listeners to feel empowered to use the information that they've learned on the Dave and Dujanovic show to help their families, to help make good decisions, help investigate other avenues to maybe protect their family's safety or protect their family's money. I'm hopeful our show leaves our listeners with a sense of empowerment so they can make the best decision possible for themselves and for their families.
Listen for Dave and Dujanovic 9 to noon on KSL News Radio.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, a bus driver for the Alpine School District is accused of sitting on a child, now being sued by its parents. Second, 3 U.S. service members were killed by an enemy drone in Jordan after it had reportedly slipped past American defenses. And third, investigators finding out more now about the shooting that killed 3 people on the UNLV campus. 50 degrees and sunny right now in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Get deeper insights on the news from Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today. As always, I am Boyd Matheson, and we've been following, of course, the developments in the Middle East, where 3 American service individuals were killed by a drone strike in Jordan, unmanned drone strike, clearly from the Iranian-backed militias and proxy groups there. If you missed the top of the show, we dug into that a little bit in terms of what has been happening, what has been going on. As we round out hour number 1, we want to go to the White House response to all of this, and we're going to stay with this throughout the day today. It's evolving and moving quickly, and we're trying to keep our finger on the pulse of everything that's going on, checking our sources in terms of things that we're hearing or sensing in terms of the U.S. response, what it means to the region, and really what comes next. So there will be a lot of discussion, a lot of deliberation taking place after these attacks. Again, there were 3 service members that were killed. William Rivers, who was 46 years of age, Kennedy Sanders, who was 24, and Breonna Moffett, who was just 23. And the latest reports we have say that over 40 members of the U.S. military have been injured in that strike. And so let's go to the White House response. The Strategic Communications Director for the White House, John Kirby, began today's press briefing with a message of condolence and grief for the soldiers that had been killed in the attack.
The President and the First Lady, as well as everyone in the administration, send their condolences to the family of those who were killed. No Blue Star family ever wants to become a Gold Star family. And sadly, there are now 3 more families on that roster. It's hard to imagine the grief that they're feeling right now and that they will feel for the rest of their lives. We want them to know that we'll make sure that they get all the support that they need and that we mourn with them. We also wish a complete recovery for all those wounded in this attack. They are receiving and will continue to receive the very best medical care that the military can provide them.
You know, I actually appreciated the fact that John Kirby slowed down enough in the race and chase of our 24/7 news cycle to be very clear in terms of these new Gold Star families that have had someone killed in action, and just how important it is for us to stop and recognize in the midst of all of these conflicts all around the world that those who put on the uniform of the United States of America do so at great risk, and that they sacrifice and their families sacrifice. And I also thought it was important that John Kirby mentioned the support that will be going to those families, those new Gold Star families, because it is the responsibility of the United States of America when we send our brave women and men into harm's way, that we do so with very clear objectives, with all the right capabilities, assets, support that they need to be successful, that we take care of them when they return home, and on days like today, that we take care of their families when they don't. And I thought that was an important message coming out of the White House briefing today. John Kirby went on to explain what our troops are doing in Jordan, why we have a base there, and that they're there, and the other countries, of course, where we have military personnel in the Middle East as part of the longstanding effort to combat and to counter ISIS. He said that the United States does not seek escalation with Iran for these attacks, but that the U.S. will definitely forcefully respond.
These troops were conducting a vital mission in the region aimed at helping us work with partners to counter ISIS. And even as the Defense Department gathers more information about the attack, that mission must and will continue. The counter-ISIS mission is separate and distinct. Indeed, it has been long-standing and unrelated to our efforts to support Israel and to prevent a wider conflict in the region. We do not seek another war. We do not seek to escalate. But we will absolutely do what is required to protect ourselves, to continue that mission, and to respond appropriately to these attacks.
I think this is also an important point of clarity from John Kirby and from the White House, the administration, that this is a long-standing effort to counter ISIS in the region, that this was not connected in any way, shape, or form to support for Israel. So those are different components, all interconnected and interrelated, of course, but this was a long-standing presence in the region by the United States to combat and counter ISIS. So that's an important part for all of this. He also went on to explain that on one hand, they're not going to publicize or be specific about it, any kind of U.S. response, what that will look like, what shape that will take, how soon that will be. But he was also very clear to say, look, we know that that Iran is ultimately responsible for this because these are troops and groups that are backed, supported, often trained, definitely armed by Iran.
This attack over the weekend was escalatory, and it requires a response. Make no mistake about that. I will not get ahead of the president's decision-making. Clearly, these attacks continue, and now they've had lethal consequences. We know these groups are supported by Iran. Make no mistake about that. We know that. And this administration has taken action in the past to hold them accountable, and we've taken action over the last 3 years to hold Iran accountable for a range of destabilizing activities. Issued more than 500 sanctions, or 500 entities sanctioned, just since we came into office, as well as changing our force posture in the Middle East appropriately.
And so, well, he talked about some of those things that the administration has done since they came into office 3 years ago, that there has been this conflict in terms of who those sanctions have hit and who they have not. How money has flowed and what it was able to be used for, whether it's humanitarian aid, whether it was the Iranian regime then being able to take that money and use it to arm some of these other proxy groups. And then, of course, the flow of oil and of other things in the region has also been very much front and center in all of this. And I think it really comes down to this whole idea that when the Iranian regime is able to get profit, whether that's from the flow of oil, we know over $100 billion in oil sales have happened since some of these sanctions have been lifted or eased, that a lot of those profits go directly to these proxies, like the Houthis, like others that have carried out attacks like were carried out over the weekend that ultimately cost the lives of 3 American service members, injuring 40 more. And so that's part of the calculation. And these are the days that the commander-in-chief really earns the title. And as we've often said on this show, that when the sun is out and the breeze is light and the sea is calm, every boat in the harbor has a great captain. But when the winds rage and the winds howl and the storm is big, you find out if you have a captain on the boat. And I think that's just going to be one of those seasons for President Biden and his administration, that they're going to have to be able to navigate and negotiate a whole host of things. Remember, we're still trying to negotiate hostage release from Hamas and dealing with the conflict with Israel. We have a host of other things going on in the region that are very complicated. But this is one that strikes very personally. Again, we have 3 new Gold Star families in this country because of this drone attack that took the lives of 3 American service members, and we pay tribute to them, William Rivers, Kennedy Sanders, and Breonna Moffett, and to their families, new Gold Star families. And I thought it was also interesting, just in rounding this out, John Kirby framed the president's statement yesterday that we'll respond militarily in our own time and in our own way.
As he said yesterday, we will respond. We'll do that on our schedule, in our time, and we'll do it in the manner of the President's choosing as Commander-in-Chief. We'll also do it fully cognizant of the fact that these groups, backed by Tehran, have just taken the lives of American troops.
So I think it's important to keep in mind as we march all of this forward, and this is an ever-evolving, rapidly changing. We're actually watching Secretary Blinken reacting to the killing of the 3 U.S. soldiers. We'll add that to our coverage. We're going to come back at 2:35 with Paul McCleary to look at the political aspects of it as well. That rounds out hour number 1 of Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. We'll step aside for some top-of-the-hour news, but don't go anywhere. When we come back, we'll pick it right up. My conversation with Governor Spencer Cox over the weekend. We'll talk about that and a host of other things coming up next on Inside Sources.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
It's 2 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top local story this hour. A man who applied for a job at the University of Utah is suing the school. He claims reverse discrimination. KSL News Radio's Eric Cabrera has more.
Dr. Wyatt Feld alleges the school's diversity initiatives are the reason he was passed up for a professor position in the mechanical engineering department. As a white man and Latter-day Saint, he argues gender, race, and religion kept him from getting hired in spite of his qualifications. In a statement, the university said they haven't had a chance to review these claims, but did show us a rejected appeal with the state's Anti-Discrimination and Labor Division from last July, showing those claims were unfounded.
KSL News Radio's Eric Cabrera there. Jury selection underway today in Salt Lake City for a police canine handler who was accused of using his dog to carry out an assault on a suspect who already surrendered. Nicholas Pierce is accused of ordering his canine Tuco to attack a man who was kneeling and showing his hands back in April of 2020. After that, Salt Lake City stopped using canines to arrest suspects. If convicted, Pierce could get up to 15 years in prison. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. The Pentagon has confirmed the deaths of 3 Army Reserve soldiers killed this weekend by a drone attack on their base in Jordan. Other members of the unit out of Georgia were injured, some seriously. Deputy Secretary Sabrina Singh.
8 personnel who received injuries required medical evacuation from Jordan to the Baghdad Diplomatic Support Center. 3 of those patients are scheduled for imminent transport to Landstuhl Regional Medical Center for follow-on care.
The AP reports the enemy drone may have gotten through American air defenses because they were waiting for an American drone coming in at the same time. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average has gone up substantially in the last couple of hours, now sitting at 223 points above where we began the morning. The NASDAQ up 172 right now. And our KSL weather, we've got sunshine out there, and that'll continue. More on that coming up. KSL News Time, 2:02.
News doesn't just mean information or dates.
It's the story of our local history being told in real time.
Be a part of the story. This is Tim Hughes and Amanda Dixon.
We hope to be a part of your story. We have you covered on KSL News Radio.
This Monday Tax Tip is brought to you by Susan Spears, CEO of the Utah Association of CPAs.
If you haven't already funded your retirement for 2023, do so by April 15th. That's the deadline for contributing to a traditional IRA or a Roth IRA. Making the deductible contribution could help you lower your tax liability this year. To qualify for the full annual IRA deduction in 23, you must either 1, not be eligible to participate in a company retirement plan, or 2, if you are eligible, your adjusted gross income must be less than $73,000 for single or head of household filers, or $129,000 or less for couples filing jointly. The maximum IRA contribution you can make is $6,500 or $7,500 if you're 50 or older. Discuss your IRA deduction options with your CPA.
Get the most out of your income tax preparation when you hire a CPA. Go to uacpa.org to find a CPA that's right for you. Listen to KSL on Monday for more tax tips from the Utah Association of CPAs.
Ew, gotta get rid of this old Backstreet Boys t-shirt.
Tell me why
Because it stinks, boys.
Tell me why.
I've washed it so many times, but the odor won't come out.
Tell me why.
No, you tell me why I can't get rid of this odor.
Have you tried Downy Rinse and Refresh? It doesn't just cover up odors, it helps remove them.
Wow, it worked, guys.
Yeah.
Downy Rinse and Refresh removes more odor in one wash than the leading value detergent in 3 washes. Find it wherever you buy laundry products.
With no fees or minimums and no overdraft fees, banking with Capital One is the easiest decision in the history of decisions. Even easier than choosing to keep the Grinch away from the toy drive.
Who's going to deliver the toys to the kids?
What about me, the Grinch?
No.
Yep, even easier than that.
You steal the presents one time.
With no fees or minimums and no overdraft fees, is it even a decision? That's banking reimagined. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. Capital One NA, member FDIC. Copyright Dr. Seuss Enterprises. Copyright Turner Entertainment Company.
It's the Boat Show, February 1st through the 4th at Mountain America Expo.
Save $2 at UtahBoatShow.com.
The Boat Show, fun for the whole family.
And with traffic and weather together, brought to you by Sinclair's Dino Pay app, save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meese.
We do have a crash in Summit County. It's at the exit from westbound I-80 at Silver Creek, the Highway 40 junction. That's exit number 146, and it had been blocking all lanes of travel. It's Zero Res's best deal of the year. Get 1 room of carpet cleaned starting at $25 per room with promo code 25RM. Book online anytime at zerores.com. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, sunny skies, warm temperatures through the first part of the week. An inversion, though, will impact our air quality. Showers move into Utah a little bit later in the week. Right now, 52 degrees and sunny. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, legislators have long struggled to keep up with social media, which has let these platforms dodge different kinds of regulation for a very long time. Apps like TikTok and X have become America's biggest source of misinformation and disinformation, and a leading cause for poor mental health, especially amongst our teenagers. Lawmakers are trying to wrap their heads around it and figure out what it should actually look like from a legislative component, policy component. The question, though, is much bigger than that in terms of what do we actually do that's going to impact our children, our grandchildren, and even us adults. Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
Well, we're going to take a deep dive look at this over the next 25 minutes here on KSL News Radio on Inside Sources, because social media has become so prevalent and so dominant in all of our lives, but the impact has been especially great amongst young people. And so we're going to do a couple of things. We're going to get into a conversation I had over the weekend with Utah Governor Spencer Cox for KSL TV's Sunday edition, talk about some of the impact of social media and what kinds of conversations we need to be having around it. And then we'll get very specific in terms of what that looks like from a legislative standpoint and what it looks like from a lawsuit standpoint as well. We'll have Hannah Syriac joining us from Deseret.com to break that down just a little bit as well. So all of these are crucial conversations. All of these are things we have to get to because government has a role. Absolutely. Platform companies definitely have a role to play as well. And parents, teachers, neighbors, friends, all of us have a role to play as well. So let's dive into it for the next 25 minutes here. Stick with us. So as I mentioned, I had the opportunity to sit down with Governor Spencer Cox in studio here at KSL TV for the Sunday edition over the weekend. And we talked about social media and the impact it is having on our young people.
It has to start with the data and the research. Now, we're seeing it happening. Every family has been impacted with this, but young people, especially young women, we've seen just huge increases when it comes to mental health issues. So, anxiety, depression, self-harm, all of those things. And every day it seems like there's new research showing a tie to social media. This started about 2012. It's been skyrocketing, and that's where it starts for us. We know know we have to do something to help our kids, to protect our kids, and the social media companies are not doing that. And so that's kind of where we started. We passed some of the most aggressive legislation in the country last year, but we put a delayed start date on that so we could work through it, so we could get input. We really want to get this right here in Utah.
That's Governor Spencer Cox on KSL Sunday edition over the weekend, talking about that. I asked the governor what he wished we were talking about more in regarding to our kids and technology. He said the conversation really has to center around human connection.
I wish we were talking about how to improve real connection with our young people. We are, as human beings, we're wired for connection. We need each other. We need that time together. So again, while getting it out of classrooms are important, my wife, who's an educator, would tell you if she was here, she wants it out of the lunchroom too. She wants kids to interact, to have these experiences face to face, to go hang out at the mall, to screw around on weekends. When we were kids, we would leave and our parents didn't know where we were. And yes, we got in trouble. Yeah. We would get in trouble sometimes, but kids need that experience. That's how they grow. That's how they learn resiliency later on in life. And our kids, too many of them are missing out on it.
I think the governor's spot on there that we do need to make sure we're focusing on connection and that personal connection, that personal interaction. So often, even when our kids are out with friends, they're still sitting in front of a video screen. Playing games rather than having that interaction, doing some of those things that, as the Governor Cox pointed out, actually helps teach them a little bit of resilience, some communication skills, problem-solving skills, all of those things that are desperately needed today. Governor Cox also told me on Sunday edition that the social media lawsuits are based really in the harm that they know they're doing. This is an important distinction. Take a listen.
Had some leakers from some of these major companies who have shown that these companies knew what they were doing, knew it was causing harm, knew that their designs were going to addict kids, and they ignored those warnings and moved forward anyway. Much like opioid companies and cigarette companies in the day. So that's the basis of the lawsuit, to hold them accountable for the damage that they've done, the legislation to make them responsible so that they can give families and parents more tools to stop the madness.
Yeah. So that was relating to many of the lawsuits that have been filed, including by the state of Utah. And we're going to dig into those lawsuits, as I mentioned, coming up here at 2:20 with Hannah Syriac from Deseret.com to break that portion down. But I do think it was interesting that Governor Cox equated a lot of what these social media companies are doing, knowingly doing, similar to tobacco companies, opioid companies, and so on. That we really do have to make sure that if companies know they're doing harm, if they're purely going after profits and addicting us to devices, especially our young people, we got to have a different kind of conversation around that. The governor went on to talk about the fact that these apps literally are designed to addict our children, just like slot machines.
The way they're designed, they're designed to addict us to them. We don't allow that. We don't let kids go gamble in Vegas and get addicted to slot machines. But it's the very same technology. It's the very same theory that they're using to addict our children. And so we're pushing back.
Now, the governor wrapped things up there talking about the fact that the goal of all conversations, of all the interaction and all the levers of government in terms of policy should be about making sure parents have the tools they need to help their children really thrive.
Families have the primary responsibility for this. We're not looking to usurp parents and parental responsibility. But what we're hearing from parents, and I'm one of those parents, by the way, of teenage kids, is that we need the tools and we're not getting those tools.
So as we look at all of that, and again, big thanks to Governor Cox for joining me on KSL TV's Sunday edition. You can see that at ksltv.com. Really leading this conversation in terms of what comes next. There's so many things under the surface and under the headlines of all of this. There was a great piece in The Hill today by Nick Penniman talking about the fact that social media companies are media companies and that Congress should start looking at them that way. Because the user content-oriented global media companies that, as Nick pointed out, have really sucked the blood out of traditional media companies, left democracy reeling, and our kids depressed. Facebook's motto, of course, move fast and break things, has become the ethos of many in Silicon Valley. Now it's time to slow things down and fix things. I think that's an important component to this conversation, and that's what we want to get to as well. And there's a host of other things that go along with that. We can get into copyright laws and a host of other things that are going to be part of this, as these social media companies really are media companies. And as we talked about late last week, they're also political companies because so many of our young people get their news from their social media feed, from TikTok, from Instagram, from all of those places. And now they're actually being paid by political action committees to be influencers. So you have an influencer that maybe an 18-year-old is following, and suddenly they're putting in messages that are making them more likely to vote for one political party or the other. We've gone past news. We've gone past just media. And where does that fit in? And where should those funds be reported? Should we know if a social media influencer that we'd like to follow because they do really cool food reviews is also getting very subtle messages to try to influence how we vote on a particular issue? That's something to consider as well. All right, we're going to stay with the conversation because this is a crucial one. Again, we started with Governor Spencer Cox and my conversation on Sunday edition for KSL 5 TV, talking about the high-level component of social media, what needs to happen there. When we come back from the break, we're going to dig in a little deeper and a little further. We're going to have a crucial conversation with Hannah Syriac, who's been tracking the lawsuit, what it really is, what it really means, and why we all need to pay attention. Stay with us. We'll continue the conversation on Inside Sources.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. Meet Aileen.
Hello.
Aileen suffers from FOMO.
Fear of missing out.
Missing out on her favorite KSL shows.
I really do.
Fear not, Aileen. Just bring up the podcast page at kslnewsradio.com. Utah's Morning News, Dave and Debbie, Boyd Matheson, and Jeff Kaplan are all there. Plus BYU Cougar Podcasts, The Movie Show, and more.
No more FOMO?
No more FOMO. When you can't listen live, we have you covered at kslnewsradio.com.
Do you enjoy fishing, hunting, or just soaking in the beautiful outdoors? Then check out the KSL Outdoors Show, airing Saturdays at 6:30 p.m. and midnight on KSL 5 TV. Outdoors with Adam Eagle is a unique show that takes viewers on a journey through Utah's beautiful backcountry. Watch it live every weekend or find the KSL Outdoors Show on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. It's the KSL Outdoors Show, brought to you by Camp Chef. Jazz Plus is here. With Jazz Plus, you can watch games live from your TV, computer, tablet, or phone. So don't miss any of the action when you're at home or away. Can't get enough of your favorite team? Go behind the scenes and see what the team is up to on and off the court. With flexible plans, you can choose what works for you, from full season to monthly, or just pick a single game you want to watch. Sign up and subscribe today at UtahJazzPlus.com.
The Management Minute is a service of the MBA program in the John M. Huntsman School of Business at Utah State University. I'm Professor Scott Hammond. In football, the kicker sits on the bench for most of the game. They are not needed until they are really needed. Then in one play, they might win the game. Most work teams require specialty expertise as well. If you're the tax accountant or tax attorney, you might spend a lot of time on the bench before you get your chance to save the bottom line or prevent a lawsuit. Sometimes what you have in common with your team members might be less important than the unique skills you bring to your team. So team leaders need to recognize that there are times when one expert who rarely gets used is the most important member of the team. Learn more about what makes the best teams work in an MBA from Utah State University. Go to utahstatemba.com. That's utahstatemba.com. I'm Scott Hammond. Hope to see you in one of our classes.
Guys, did you know your testosterone affects everything in your system, including how you feel and perform every day? Right now, Revive Men's Health Salt Lake City will check your testosterone for free. Knowing your T levels is the first step in understanding if you have low T. Your testosterone level impacts your energy, libido, sleep, weight, hair loss, mood, and even ED. Maintaining an appropriate T level can change your whole life. Most men start to see changes in their hormone levels in their 30s. Experience and results matter. So what are you waiting for? Get your T levels checked today by local, experienced, and trusted men's health experts. They've helped thousands of men since 2011. They're so confident they can help you, they even guarantee it. Call Revive today and schedule your free testosterone test, free exam, and free consultation. Call Revive Men's Health at 801-263-7777. That's 801-263-7777. Or visit revivemenshealth.com.
When I have an asthma attack, I feel scared.
Prevent your child's next asthma attack. Call 1-866-NO-ATTACKS. Visit www.noattacks.org or call your doctor, because even one attack is one too many. Brought to you by the EPA and the Ad Council.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, a man is suing the University of Utah claiming reverse discrimination after he wasn't given a professor position. Second, a jury being selected today for a canine handler from Salt Lake City. He was accused of carrying out an assault with his dog on a suspect who'd surrendered. And third, 8 survivors of the attack on U.S. service members in Jordan are being transported to Germany now to get medical attention. Right now, 52 degrees and sunny in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today, as always. I am Boyd Matheson, and we're staying with the conversation. We started this hour with my conversation with Utah Governor Spencer Cox over the weekend on KSL 5 TV's Sunday edition, talking about social media, particularly the impact on our young people. And we want to keep narrowing this down in terms of proper role of government. And there's been a series of lawsuits, not just here in the state of Utah, but other places around the country. And we wanted to dig into that because there's some really important information, I think, that is either getting conflated or completely left out of the conversation. And really thrilled to have joining us on the program today, Hannah Syriac, staff writer at Deseret.com. And Hannah, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Boyd.
Hey, you've been digging deep, long, and hard into all of this, particularly as it relates to Utah's lawsuit against TikTok. And some of the allegations within that, I think, are really revealing and probably deserving of a little more conversation.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. So when the lawsuit was initially put out there, it was redacted. And then the state of Utah argued, hey, we need to have this information be more public. So most of the lawsuit has now been unredacted. And some of the allegations that have been revealed have dealt with the state of Utah claiming that internal documents show that TikTok acknowledges that it uses, quote, coercive design tactics, end quote. And they list examples such as infinite scroll, which is, the ability to just keep on scrolling, as well as constant notifications.
Yeah, and as you look at that, you did a great job of breaking this down in your piece at Deseret.com. Everyone should check that out today as well. Give us a sense in terms of what that is producing in terms of results, especially with kids that really are addicted to that forever scrolling, the notification. What does that look like in a real young person's life?
So one of the interesting things that the suit talks about is this allegation that TikTok's own data shows that children who are between the ages of 13 and 17 end up checking the app around 17 times a day, and they spend an average of 2 hours on the app daily. And then on top of that, there's this allegation that TikTok is aware that more than 20% of children use its app late at night, and it defines late at night in the suit as between midnight and 5 a.m. So those are sleeping hours. And of course, the impacts on children that the suit alleges deal with negative mental health impacts, including loss of analytical skills, increased anxiety and depression, which really has been the focus that Governor Cox has pointed toward with the impact of social media on children in the first place.
Yeah, and unpack that a little bit more for us. Anything else in your reporting? You mentioned some of those things in terms of analytical skills, contextual thinking. But I thought some of the things that were fascinating to me was even just the conversational depth, empathy, along with that increased anxiety, also are being impacted.
I think one of the things that people are starting to see is that if you're on social media constantly, you're not having those engaging conversations with the people around you. If you're using TikTok during school or TikTok after school, children are missing out on the opportunity to engage with their peers and to engage with their parents and siblings and family members. And so I think when we're seeing these impacts, such as conversational depth, we're seeing children who are less able to engage in conversation due to their social media habits. That's at least what the state is alleging.
Yeah, and as you look at that in terms of the unredacted portions of this suit, one of the things that you highlighted as well was the platform, says, hey, we're doing things to have moderation issues and do things to kind of control it a little bit. But it seems like underneath that, as a nice headline of, hey, we're really trying to, get some moderation in all of this, it doesn't seem like it's really high priority in terms of what they're working on.
The suit alleges that TikTok's moderation systems are less than 50% accurate in some categories of minor safety. These categories included harassment, bullying, violent and graphic content, as well as harmful behavior. So, the state is essentially saying TikTok moderation systems aren't working as effectively as they should be working. The suit also brings up, this claim that internal documents show that there aren't enough moderators. And of course, I'd like to emphasize that these are allegations.
Right.
But one of the interesting ones was the suit alleging that moderators only review 0.25% of user comments, despite knowing that 42% of its users only post comments.
Oh, that's fascinating and very important point. These are the allegations. This is the part of the suit, but they were redacted initially, so this is giving us a little bit more light. What else can you see in terms of the process, or what comes next in terms of this lawsuit? What's the likely outcome of this? Where does this go from here?
I'm actually not sure of the likely outcome of the suit, but I think what's going to happen next is you're going to see both sides engage in some sort of argumentation. So they're going to submit further documents. The state of Utah will likely submit further evidence for their claims, and TikTok will likely submit evidence for their claim that they're doing enough to moderate, right? So TikTok didn't respond to comments for me, but previously they said that they have industry-leading safeguards for young people. So I expect that in the future we'll see more of what TikTok considers these industry-leading safeguards to be, and Utah will continue with litigation. But I think really the area to watch with Utah is not so much the litigation, but what's going to happen with the social media laws, which of course were delayed, the implementation of which were delayed from March 1st to October 1st.
Yeah, and as you continue to watch that and as you continue to unpack all of this, anything in particular surprise you, Hannah, as you've really followed this and dug into it a little bit more? Anything surprise you, or anything else that we ought to be thinking about as we watch not just a lawsuit move forward or the legislature grapple with some of these things in terms of government involvement in it? What else should we be thinking about or talking about?
I think the biggest thing to be thinking about is something that came to light with Taylor Swift, right? Over the weekend, there was the news reported that there were artificially manipulated images of Taylor Swift that were explicit going around on the internet. And I think this intersection of artificial intelligence and social media, as well as artificial intelligence and pornography, is going to become a bigger issue. And how that plays out is going to be connected to social media, because social media is often where these images circulate. They are taken down, right, in response to reports. But I think that this issue of how images that are explicit, that are going to be manipulated, is kind of the next step with how legislation is going to play out. So I think Senator Lee's bill dealing with age verification is one to watch nationally, and then also watching to see if Utah's age verification bill, which was also challenged in court, but the judge ruled that it was fine. Watching to see what happens with that too is going to be, in my view, the next big social media issue.
Great perspective, great writing. Hannah Syriac, staff writer at Deseret.com. Check out her piece at Deseret.com. Very eye-opening and a lot to think about and a lot to follow and watch locally and nationally. This is one other area where Utah is really leaning into this, I think, in an interesting and a very important way. Hannah, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
All right, that's Hannah Syriac from Deseret.com, and these are all going to be things we have to grapple with. But I think of all of it, we have to come back to what are you doing? What am I doing? How are we helping our children and grandchildren? What kind of conversations are we having in the community? Remember, it's community and culture that lead. The politicians will follow. It's up to us to make sure we keep leaning into that. We'll be right back.
It's 2:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. Our top local story this hour, a new court filing is shedding light on why Utah leaders decided to sue TikTok. It includes details that we weren't able to see when the suit was filed at first.
Much of the original suit against TikTok was redacted, but new filings last week included parts of that original complaint unredacted. In it, state prosecutors compared TikTok to a casino, saying it is engineered to manipulate users and keep them coming back. The suit also claims TikTok was fully aware of how harmful its app could be to the mental health of young people. Becky Bruce, KSL News Radio.
A man's in the hospital after a trench collapse at a construction site in Weber County. Fire department says it was extremely muddy, completely buried him. Another worker brought over a backhoe and dug him out, and that's something that first responders don't recommend because of the risk of hurting rather than helping. In this case, though, it worked. The victim was taken to the hospital in critical condition, but was conscious when rescuers arrived on the scene. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. It was 21 years ago the hip-hop artist known as Jam Master Jay was murdered at a recording studio in New York City. ABC's Derek Dennis says the men accused of killing him are now on trial.
In opening statements, prosecutors said the two suspects, Ronald Washington and Carl Jordan Jr., carried out the 2002 murder as revenge for being cut out of a drug deal. Meisel's mother and siblings have all died since the murder, but others were in court, including this family friend known as L Train.
I just want to see justice being served, that's all.
Defense lawyers say the murder happened so long ago and without any forensic evidence that the suspects should be exonerated. Derek Dennis, ABC News.
Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average up now 224 points on the day at the close of trading. And the NASDAQ was up 172. The S&P 500 closed the day up 36 points. And our KSL weather, we've got lots of sunshine. That's next. KSL News Time, 2:31.
You know what's great about KSL's traffic coverage? Trained traffic reporters and real listeners.
Trading information and making the commute safer and faster for everyone.
Every 10 minutes on the nines, we have you covered on KSL News Radio.
If you've ever experienced running out of hot water before your shower was done or hard water spots on dishes and fixtures, I've got a deal you might be interested in. What's up, everybody? I'm Mike Wilson with Any Hour Services, and you probably already know that a tankless water heater and a water softener solve both issues. If you've ever thought about looking into getting a tankless water heater, here's the deal I was talking about. Through the end of February, we're including a free water softener with every new tankless water heater we install. The best part of this deal might be that you never have to worry about. To take advantage of this deal, call Any Hour Services before the end of February. The visit's free and there's no obligation to buy. If you decide to have us install a new tankless water heater, we'll throw in the water softener for free. That's right, a free water softener when you purchase a tankless water heater. Pick up the phone and call Any Hour Services right now for all the details. 801-443-7400. You can Google Any Hour Services. You can even schedule online at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
Derek Overstreet, founder of the New Millennium Group. We're a financial planning firm. Listen, we're fiduciaries. We have advisors standing by right now to take your call. That's 888-999-6370. 888-999-6370. The reason you're going to want to call is we're going to help you retire 3 to 5 years before you thought possible. Now, imagine how that would be if you could actually retire 3 to 5 years sooner than your plan was. The way we do this is by putting together a step-by-step plan. taking into consideration any rental properties that you have, any pension income that you have, your Social Security. Listen, we put that all together for you in writing. It will allow us to build your income based on inflation. You know, inflation has been rapidly rising. You and I both need a plan that whatever we start out our income at, in 5 or 10 years, we're going to need 40% more income. So if you're one of those people listening and you'd like a plan in writing, give us a call at 888-999-6370. That's 888-999-6370, or go to utahsfinancialplanner.com.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meeks.
We do have a good drive on all the Valley freeways. No accidents, no delays. Backup going southbound Mountain View corridor. These delays are in the West Valley Kearns area as you're approaching 5400 South. Advanced Window Products, factory direct affordable windows. Call today. They're on their way. Financing available. Save now, pay later. AdvancedWindows.com. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, sunny skies, warm temperatures through the first part of the week, and a weak inversion will impact our air quality. Then showers move into Utah, looking like Thursday and Friday. And right now, 52 degrees and sunny. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Throughout the program today, we've been looking at the various nuances, implications, ramifications, and what comes next in the Middle East after 3 members of the U.S. military were killed in a drone attack in Jordan over the weekend. The attack was attributed to the Iran-backed militants, marked the first death of American service members in the Middle East since violence spiked there starting on October 7th. President Biden has promised a response, and we'll continue to watch and see what that will look like in the days ahead. But we want to continue the conversation to figure out some of the things underneath those headlines, and do just want to pause for a moment and note that there are 3 new Gold Star families in our country, and we should never lose sight of that freedom really isn't free. William Rivers, who was 46 years of age, Kennedy Sanders, who was 24, and Breonna Moffett, who was just 23 years of age. Their families now Gold Star families, and that is worth all of us pausing and always being grateful. We're really pleased to have back on the program with us Paul McCleary, who covers major defense programs and acquisition policy for Politico. Had a great piece in Politico today. And Paul, welcome back to the program. And looking at it from the Defense Department, and what is happening there. Give us a sense in terms of what you're hearing. What is it that you're sensing as a result of these attacks over the weekend?
Hi, thanks for having me on. This is the latest in about 160 attacks against U.S. forces in Iraq, Syria, and now in Jordan since October 7th, since Hamas' invasion of Israel. So this has been, these Iranian proxies have been really pushing U.S. forces in these regions with ballistic missiles, small drones, things like that. The vast majority have gotten through. A few have, the vast majority have been shot down. A few have gotten through and injured U.S. service members there. So the Biden administration has responded. There's been a few airstrikes against some of these proxy groups in northern Iraq that killed some of the militia members there. But the next response by the Biden administration, now there's been 3 deaths, over 30 injured, will likely be larger. Unclear exactly what that will be, but the United States has plenty of assets in the region at sea and on land for airstrikes or Tomahawk missile strikes. So we're just kind of waiting to see where these strikes will be. Likely they'll be somewhere in western Iraq, places like that.
Yeah, and I know there have been calls for some to make it a little closer to home for the Iranian regime in terms of something inside of Iran that might disrupt those capabilities or drones or whatever it might be that they're using with these proxy fighters. As you mentioned, nearly 160 attacks since October the 7th on U.S. forces there. Any other sense in terms of what this might shape up? Obviously, the administration is trying to balance making sure we don't escalate something in the region, but also making sure the response is significant enough that it does become a deterrent.
Exactly right. I mean, a lot of these drones and missiles can be put together and manufactured, at these militant bases, as we've seen in Yemen with the Houthi attacks in the Red Sea. Right, the Iranians take these things apart, put them on different ships, different trucks, things like that, and ship them to these places. So, a strike in Iran would be possible, but really, I would think they'll go after the militias themselves. The militias, it should be noted, are Iranian supported, but they don't always take direction directly from Tehran, right? You have to blame Tehran for this in the end, and then the Iranians. But these militias act with some autonomy. So it's really them you're going to want to go at. Although the arguments for striking the Iranian regime after months of attacks on U.S. service members is there. I mean, during the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, especially Iraq, almost all the IED components, the EFP components, came from Iran, or were Iranian trainers taught the militias in Iraq and the terrorists in Iraq how to use this stuff. So we didn't strike inside Iran then. There were sanctions and things like that. So I would think that would probably be the way to go, sanctions and strikes outside of Iran, unless there'll be a major escalation and unprecedented strike inside Iran.
Yeah, that would definitely be a game changer for sure. And obviously being able to navigate that, I think, is the test for the Biden administration. This is the stormy sea moment for the administration, and a pretty tough needle to thread in terms of everything going on in the region, where there has seemed to have been this focus on de-escalating almost at all costs. And now there's clearly an escalation moment. And so does that become more of a whiplash? Does that lead to maybe a disproportional response? And then what does that do? What else are you hearing or sensing in terms of what the administration is really contemplating or thinking? And then again, kind of that broader impact into the region.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that can't be overlooked is that this is an election year, right? And war is political. War is influenced by politics, domestic politics. Always has been, always will be. So the White House is definitely weighing that as well. Obviously President Trump took out Soleimani, the IRGC leader, which I assume he'll be talking quite a bit about in the coming days. And this doesn't mean the Biden administration would ramp up the level of strikes or do this for purely political reasons, but you can't divorce that from what's happening. But this is becoming a fight that's spreading across the region, like we said, from Yemen and the Red Sea right through the West Bank and then east into Syria and Iraq and now Jordan. I mean, this site in Jordan, Tower 22, has been targeted before. They've never hit it. It's right by this base called At-Tanf, which is a U.S. special operations base in Syria and kind of southeast Syria. So this is the Tower 22 is kind of a logistics node for that At-Tanf base. That's why the 3 soldiers who were killed were reservists, and not active duty troops. But it's very difficult for the United States and its allies in the region and in Europe to try to keep a lid on what is an increasingly violent and deadly conflict throughout the region, right? And there's something Jens Stoltenberg from NATO is in town this week in Washington. I'm sure they're talking about this. Not that NATO would get involved, but 32 European countries are being represented here. So it is going to be difficult for everyone to try to find a proportional response that doesn't foment more violence. But it's hard to imagine how any response doesn't. I mean, we're in this cycle now.
Yeah, the cycle. I think that's absolutely right. And you mentioned the political component to it, and we always hope our leaders, regardless of political persuasion, can divorce themselves at least somewhat from the politics of it all. And obviously, this gets more complicated in an election year. It gets more complicated because you have Israel aid funding wrapped up with Ukraine, wrapped up with U.S. southern border. All of those things we live in such an interconnected world. What else are you watching for as this plays out?
Yeah, the Ukraine aid is going to be huge, and that's obviously tied up, as you said, with the southern border question. Another big question is that the United States we've extended aircraft carriers in the region. We have several destroyers in the Red Sea that we normally don't have. More aircraft have been sent to the region. That costs money. The defense budget is not expected to go up very much when it comes out in March. So the DoD and the Biden administration is going to have to figure out a way to pay for this. Tomahawks are not cheap. Air defenses are not cheap. So there's going to be a bill to pay there. And that bill, there's some talk on the Hill of trying to put some of that operations and maintenance money into the supplemental and tie it to that. And there's other about trying to put it in the base budget. So there's going to be a dance in Congress and the White House, too, how to pay for this. This is not cheap. You know, there was just 2 aircraft carriers there. We're down to 1. That Eisenhower is going to have to leave at some point, and another one will probably come in. So this is high-level, expensive stuff that you can't just wave a wand and come up with money to pay for these kind of big, expensive, long-term deployments.
Yeah, and they're big, they're expensive, and they're long-term. And all of the re-upping of all of that is not a fast thing. It takes a lot of time to keep those things rolling. Real quickly, before I let you go, I want to flip it onto kind of the Iranian strategy in all of this and just get a sense of what are people saying in terms of what's the end game there? Is Iran really trying to say, okay, we're going to take control of the flow of energy in the region, commerce, clearly doing that through some of these attacks on commercial ships in the Red Sea? Is that the end game, to try to nudge the U.S. influence out, or to see if the U.S. will go to an appeasement strategy? Any sense in terms of how Iran and its regime is looking at a strategy in terms of where this goes from here?
Yeah, I mean, that's the big question here. What's the end game in Tehran here? I mean, they've been trying to push the United States out of Iraq and Syria for 20 years now. It hasn't been successful. They've done it in overt ways. They've done it in covert ways. Hasn't worked. They've tried to create a rift between the U.S. government and the Iraqi government specifically. They've come close a few times to succeeding, but the Iraqis, just ISIS is still an issue. So they want the United States, the trainers and people like that to remain there. I think it's Tehran. I think what they're doing is just trying to foment some chaos here. After they're taking advantage of the situation of the war in Gaza, and they're trying to expand it and foment some chaos and get a sense of how the United States will react and if they will react. And if the United States doesn't react strongly, they will probably keep pushing it to see how much they can get away with. I mean, they did it in Iraq for 15 years, and they got away with quite a bit.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that pushing against is the ultimate thing of, will the U.S. act? We always say it's like the British Bobby who yells stop, or I'll yell stop again. And will the U.S. take that strategy, or will there be a more forceful response? And again, what does that mean for the region as well? Paul McCleary, fantastic insight today, helping us make the news make sense from Politico. Paul, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, we'll step aside for one last break. A lot of great analysis in there in terms of what is actually going on, what it means over there, and what it means right here at home. We'll take a quick break, come back with some final thoughts coming up next on Inside Sources right here on KSL News Radio.
You probably love some Utah Jazz tickets. Am I right?
Through traffic all the way to the finish line and let it up and in.
KSL wants you to go see the Jazz Sixers game. Listen to Tim and Amanda Wednesday and Thursday morning for your chance to win Primo Jazz tickets Wednesday and Thursday on Utah's Morning News on KSL News Radio.
The new year is here, and it's time to take advantage of Zero Res's best deal of the year. Carpets, tile, rugs, upholstery, basically every surface in your home can be Zero Resified. So it's time to call the cleaning pros at Zero Res. Don't forget your air ducts to help alleviate allergies or asthma. Enjoy less dust, lower energy bills, and your home will stay cleaner longer. Don't DIY it. Call Zero Res because you know it's safe and effective. Zero Res has a 4.8 rating on Google with over 3,300 reviews. The Zero Res Gotta Love It guarantee makes it easy to get what you pay for. Yeah, Zero Res absolutely stands behind every cleaning. Don't miss the best deal of the year. Get back to clean and get one room of carpet cleaning starting at just $25 per room by using promo code 25RM. Call Zero Res at 866-0RES or go online at zerores.com and say you want the station special. Zero Res. Spell it backward or forwards. It spells the same.
Getting your biggest tax refund from Jackson Hewitt can lead to some spirited reactions.
Jackson Hewitt!
Jackson Hewitt is so sure that you'll get your biggest refund that if they don't, you get your money back plus $100.
Jackson Hewitt!
And Jackson Hewitt also guarantees the accuracy of your return for life. So don't just sit there. For your biggest refund guaranteed, walk into a Jackson Hewitt today and dance out Jackson Hewitt! Yeah!
If you only have a 401k, you're not getting the most for retirement.
Wait, what?
Add a Robinhood IRA on top, then they'll boost it by 3%.
You can do that?
And if you transfer in any retirement account, you get 3% on top of that.
Is there a limit to the match?
No limit. Robinhood Gold gets you the biggest contribution match of any IRA on the market. Sign up for Robinhood Gold at Robinhood.com/boost by April 30th. Subscription fees apply.
Investing involves risk. 3% match requires gold for 1 year from first match. Must keep IRA for 5 years. Match on transfers subject to additional terms and conditions. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC.
Many people, Amanda, I think, start each new year with one of two resolutions. One is to lose weight. The other is to save money.
Yeah.
And if you struggle to do that in the past, UCCU has an automatic way to help you.
I have used these wonderful savings goals, savings accounts at UCCU so many times. In fact, I just set one up. It's so easy. You just go and you tell it, what are you saving for? So right now I'm saving for a senior trip for my youngest son.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell it, I have until June of 2025. I want to save this much money. And then it will tell you, all right, well then every month or every other week or whatever you want to do, you have to set aside this much and it will automatically take it out of your savings account.
You can have as many accounts as you want, name them whatever you want, and let's just say you want to save $600 this year.
Right.
$50 a month will automatically go in and you're reaching your goals. You haven't done a thing.
This is the way to save money and not feel it, which is a way to be successful.
So to get started, just log in to their online or mobile banking and click on any of the goals to begin.
UCCU.com. Utah Community Credit Union. Love where you bank.
Made to shine. Love stories from Shane Company customers.
We've only been dating 6 months, but I really wanted to get my girlfriend something special for Valentine's Day. So I went to Shane Company, and they thought a gift with their birthstone would be meaningful. So I got her an opal necklace, and their opals are spectacular. I was surprised it was only a couple $100. I can't wait to give it to her.
We're passionate about sourcing the most beautiful gemstones from around the world, so your love can shine bright. Shane Company. Fine jewelry since 1929.
This Monday Tax Tip is brought to you by Susan Spears, CEO of the Utah Association of CPAs.
Choose your tax preparer wisely. Hire a CPA. As a taxpayer, you're responsible for the information you submit on your tax return. CPAs receive continuous training and have the knowledge to minimize tax liability and assist you with your tax planning in future years. The CPA will help you develop practical tax saving strategies moving forward rather than waiting to see the outcome of the previous year. As the economy continues to challenge us, let your CPA help you navigate your tax situation.
Get the most out of your income tax preparation when you hire a CPA. Go to uacpa.org to find a CPA that's right for you. That's uacpa.org. uacpa.org. Listen to KSL on Monday for more tax tips from the Utah Association of CPAs.
Tim and Amanda.
I don't want to be in the dark about things. I'm sure you don't either, Tim. I mean, I want to know what's going on with the weather. Are my kids safe? Where is my money going? I want to be informed.
Yeah, the truth is, it's important information for you and your families to make sure that you are informed so that if some changes are necessary in your life or your children's life, you can make them by listening and starting your morning with us here on KSL.
Wake up with Utah's Morning News with Tim and Amanda, 5 to 9 on KSL News Radio.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, Utah leaders are suing TikTok for engineering their product to be addictive to young people. Second, a man is hospitalized after a trench collapsed at a construction site in Weber County. And third, 2 men are on trial in New York for the murder of hip-hop artist Jam Master Jay in 2002. Right now, 52 degrees and sunny in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today. As always, I am Boyd Matheson. As we round out the program today, as always, when I get to the end of the show, I think, okay, what did I learn today? Who did I learn from? And what perspectives am I saying, I never thought of it that way before? and just how important all of those things can be. So I want to share just a couple of things that we hit during the course of the program. And if you missed any of the segments today, of course, you can go to kslpodcast.com. Just go to Inside Sources. You can watch it. You can listen to any of the individual segments on their own, or you can listen to the entire show straight through, whatever works for your workout routine, or maybe you're going for a nice stroll or working around the house a little bit. The thing to me that really jumped out today, we had a great interview with Maggie Astor from the New York Times. And big kudos to Izzy for making that one happen for us today. And we were talking about just how messy democracy can be and why this year seems incredibly messy, exhausting, exasperating, and the negative impact that can have not just on the 2024 election cycle, but on many election cycles to come. And Maggie shared with us this whole idea of how habit-forming voting actually is. And she actually shared a really interesting piece of information. She actually hadn't included it in her New York Times piece today, but she shared it with us, saying that a young voter who turns 18 just before that general election, so they get to vote for the first time almost immediately upon turning 18, their voting patterns are very different from a young person who turns 18 maybe in an off year, or maybe has a couple of years before they really get a chance to exercise that vote in a significant way. So it's habit forming. Voting is habit forming, and missing voting is habit forming. And so we talked about some of the confusion that's going on this year. Of course, we had interesting things going on in New Hampshire where you had some people on the ballot, not on the ballot. You've got former President Trump battling with various entities in Colorado and other places that to be on the ballot or not be on the ballot. You had President Joe Biden not being on the ballot as the sitting president in New Hampshire, confusing to a lot of New Hampshire voters who couldn't quite figure out that and why they had to write in the sitting president of the United States if they wanted to vote in the Democratic primary there in New Hampshire. We've also got a really squirrely one coming up in Nevada. Nevada will have a presidential primary, and the names on the presidential primary ballot in Nevada include Nikki Haley, but then also include Mike Pence, Tim Scott, and then a very long list of people I've never heard of who I think are from Nevada. Former President Donald Trump is not on the primary ballot that were mailed to Republican voters in the state of Nevada. 2 nights later, Nevada Republicans will caucus. And the only person being considered in those caucuses is former President Trump. And that is where the delegates will be divvied up, which actually matter in the end in terms of becoming the nominee. So very confusing for a lot of Nevada voters saying, wait a minute, I don't recognize a lot of these names on the ballot. What am I supposed to do? Or can I just cast this ballot? If I cast this one, can I still go to the caucus meeting? What does that mean? So there's more confusion than clarity. Now, the confusion is not just limited to the process pieces of when people vote. Of course, we had in the state of Utah this year, we had a special election. And we had a special election that kind of sat on top of municipal elections that we then moved from the first Tuesday of November to the third week, right before Thanksgiving, also creating confusion. So the interesting part of all of that is a confused voter or a voter that has to hesitate or vacillate or wonder, what am I supposed to do, is not a voter who's likely to participate. Voters want some clarity. What do I need to do? Where do I need to do it? When do I need to have it done? And then I'll do it. But it's very interesting to me that a lot of political operatives love all of this confusion and chaos because it allows them to manipulate more things and try to get their particular candidate to win. But the breaking of the cycle is what worries me. And Maggie Astor pointed this out to us. He said, look, someone who misses a cycle, particularly a presidential election cycle, they're less likely to vote in the next election, and they're less likely to vote in the election after that. And so voting is habit forming in a good way. And we all need to cultivate that habit, and not just for the big presidential races. It's even more important that you're really aware of those local races, your representative, your state senator, your city council member, your school board member. Those are all things. And when we get out of the habit that's when we can get manipulated by misinformation, disinformation. So then we spent another good chunk